Hello and welcome to Desert Island Who, a brand new Doctor Who podcast where guests talk about their favourite Doctor Who stories and how why they became a fan and what reasons for each they've chosen each episode for. I'm Conrad. With me is Will, my co-host. Hello. And our guest today is Andre, who presents a show on YouTube called Doing Doctor Who.
A very fine YouTube show, I might add.
Oh, thank you very much.
And before we get into the list, would you mind telling us what made you have the idea to doing Doctor Who?
Well, sure. I copped to this in the first post that I made, but it was Adventures with the Wife in Space, honestly, that gave me the idea. I don't know if you've read that, but it's a genius blog by Neil and Sue Perryman, where Neil Perryman made his wife watch every single classic series episode and then wrote down everything she said. And I thought it would be, first of all, I thought it would be fun to do anyway. I don't know exactly how I talked my friend Andrea into doing this, but she's committed now. So, and I thought I'm not going to pass up this opportunity. And so I asked her to record her reactions to it every time we watch a story. And we're through the arc now in season 3, which is 23 stories that we've done. And she's threatened to quit a couple of times, but
was the Web Planet one of those?
Web Planet was definitely one of those. That was a very difficult one to get through. She was angry at me for days after watching Web Planet. So that was difficult. But so I thought it might be fun to try sort of a Wife in Space-y kind of thing with someone who actually doesn't have to be married to me and can leave any time. So,
how do you arrange the meetups to watch the episodes? Because I can imagine that watching a full Doctor Who story, particularly some of the longer ones, must be quite arduous to get the free time to sit down and watch it and then do the recordings. How do you schedule that?
Well, one of the things that we decided early on was that we would do it on Monday nights. And so we both reserved that night to do it. And another thing, I'm OCD enough that I worked up a complete schedule for this long in advance just to find out how long it would take. And I made the mistake of showing it to Andrea, which I shouldn't.
Oh.
But I worked it out to about 4.5 years. But the way that we're doing it is I'm not doing any more than 4 or 5 episodes a night. So some of the longer ones we break up. Like we just did Dalek's Master Plan, but we did it over 3 weeks, 4 episodes a week.
Well, it would be a bit intense to watch it all in one go. Yes. I think she would leave then.
She definitely would have left had I tried that.
Yeah, well, the recons, that must be one of the great difficulties in getting her to continue to watch, having to watch the telesnap reconstructions.
It certainly is. I tried to keep it a secret for a while how many of them there were, and now that we're in the middle of them, it's too late to turn back. So.
Yeah.
Season 4 is coming up, and I think only about a fourth of season 4 exists. And I think I may have mentioned this to her about a week ago, and the sigh and the eye roll were epic.
Oh God, I can imagine that'd put her off a bit,
Certainly, yeah.
Wanting to do it.
I'm not really sure how how I convinced her to do it. I'm really grateful that she continues doing it, considering some of the ones we're watching. Tomorrow we're going to watch The Celestial Toymaker, and I know how bad The Celestial Toymaker is. So, yeah, so I'm grateful and glad that she continues to do it.
Does she have any idea how bad Celestial Toymaker is, or are you keeping that a surprise?
Some people on YouTube and on our website have warned her already, and so she's aware it's going to be a rough one. She's going to bring alcohol.
So, shall we move on to setting up the rules for those who don't know, those who'd like to know what the rules are to create the Desert Island Who there?
Yeah.
I think you've got
right now. This podcast is basically a rip-off of a British radio show called Desert Island Discs, where like celebrity will choose 8 songs that they would take to a desert island, and all sorts of people have been on there. This is sort of a Doctor Who version, and the guests will pick 8 Doctor Who stories that they would take to a desert island. Their 8 favourite, or maybe not even necessarily favourite, but the ones that they would say were the ones they would, if they couldn't see any others, they would just watch these ones. And you're allowed to take recons if you want, though I can understand why someone wouldn't. And you also get to pick an original novel, there's no novelizations of a TV story allowed, and also an original audio or another piece of merchandise if you'd prefer, if you haven't listened to the audios. So I believe we're now going to your first choice, Andre.
Okay. Well, my first choice was the Aztecs.
In whose service are you?
I serve the truth. Help me, Lataxu, and I promise you, you will find it.
So let me just give you some background about me and how I started watching the show. I grew up in Massachusetts, and so our local public television station started running Doctor Who when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I started watching it 7 o'clock on weeknights. It was the highlight of my day. I was a Tom Baker person first, and then a really big Peter Davison person. But for a very long time, like up until maybe 10 years ago, I had never seen any of the earlier ones. I hadn't seen the Hartnells, the Troughtons, or the Pertwees at all. And so buying the DVDs was my first really good opportunity to do that. And I am absolutely in love with the first TARDIS crew. I think the William Hartnell Doctor and Barbara and Ian and Susan are among the best teams that this show ever had. It was much more of an ensemble show at that time. Barbara is one of the greatest characters in the history of the show, I think. And so I needed to include one that had that team in it. And the Aztecs is probably my very favorite of the ones that they did. It is so Barbara's story, and that's one of the reasons I love it so much. I can watch the Aztecs over and over again just to watch Jacqueline Hill. Her performance is fantastic in this.
Yeah.
And it's sort of amazing how this is only the 6th ever story that they made.
Right.
So they've got into it so quickly, and they've found their feet. I mean, I've seen the first 3 stories, and I wasn't so keen on all of them. I mean, I like the Doctors, like the performances and all that, but I like the first episode, obviously. But I thought there was some of it was a bit slow. But that how even the 6th story this time they've got into it. I haven't personally seen the Aztecs. It's the only one on the list that I haven't seen, but I would like to see it. I mean, it is interesting, and I haven't actually seen any pure historical stories myself.
Really? Is there a reason, or you just...
There's no reason. I was just I don't know what. There's no reason to any of my DVD collection really. I just get ones that are there. I mean, I've seen Silver Nemesis. I don't know why I bought that. But I would like to see a historical one. I mean, the Aztecs is as good as any, really. And it's supposed to be one of the best
Aztecs is actually better than most, I think. The Aztecs is, I mean, it's about history, but it's also about our characters in a way that some of the historicals aren't. I think I sort of made this point when we were talking about the Massacre, Andrea and I, in which the Massacre is really about the Doctor and his companions watching history happen. And a story like the Aztecs is about what that means to them, about something that they go through in a historical period. And the story is really about Barbara's attempt to change history, to make it, to make it so that the Aztecs are not wiped out, and so that the good parts of their civilization continue on. And while that's a really noble goal, in a lot of ways, Barbara's the villain of this story. She's the one who is trying to do something that the Time Lords are constantly trying to prevent people from doing, which is change the course of history. And she's got good reasons for doing it, but she absolutely cannot do it. And it's a nice moral dilemma for her and for everybody else.
It's very much one of the first stories to set up the non-interference policy that the Time Lords have. It very much sets the rules for time travel that we haven't as much got in the previous stories. I mean, obviously we have some, but it's made clearer in the Aztecs.
And we haven't really got those rules nowadays either. I mean, it's really anything goes in the modern series.
That's true. Yeah, the Aztecs is the story that contains that famous line of William Hartnell's, "You can't rewrite history, not one line." And that's the one that's reverberated throughout the rest of the classic show.
Yeah. I mean, like in like context with the rest of William Hartnell's era, I mean, would you say that the Aztecs is like much different to a lot of it? Is different to a lot of the Hartnell stories?
I think the first 10 stories are different from most of the others anyway, because of the focus is not on the Doctor for them, really. The focus is on the entire team, and each character gets a story, you know, and gets a lot of development, a lot of interesting aspects to their characters in ways that characters like Steven and Dodo just really don't. When the show becomes more about the Doctor, it becomes sort of the show that we know and love now. But they're working really hard to establish the character of the Doctor after Susan leaves as sort of the center of the show. And up until that point, it's really more about a team. It's more about, you know, the Doctor's not even the main character. In a lot of ways, Ian's the main character and Barbara is a co-lead. So it's very much an ensemble show to that point. And that, I mean, yes, I think the Aztecs is different from a lot of them in that they really nail that. They really get the ensemble feel of this correctly. I mean, Barbara's the lead of this story in a lot of ways, but Ian gets a lot of really great things to do. Susan, even though she's gone for an episode or two, she gets some really great moments with the arranged marriage to the perfect victim, and the Doctor gets to fall in love, which is fantastic. For the first time in the show, the Doctor gets kind of a girlfriend, which is great.
Yeah. It's a very interesting dynamic with the Doctor in the show. He's more of a, like you say, a portal, a means for the other members of the cast to interact with history, as opposed to the lead hero that he would later become. He's more enabling them to travel back in time and interact with these different characters.
Right, and in a lot of ways, he's the antagonist in some of these early stories. I mean, the only reason that they encounter the Daleks pretty much at all is that he lies to them about needing mercury for the fluid link for the ship, and he's devious, and in the Edge of Destruction, he tries to kill them. I mean, so I mean, he's an untrustworthy character for these early stories, and that's really interesting. It's more interesting for me watching him evolve into the character that we love by the end of Hartnell's run. I mean, when Troughton takes over, Troughton sort of, I mean, the power of the Daleks aside, Troughton sort of plays the Doctor as this impish hero, and it's interesting to get to that point. It doesn't feel jarring when Troughton does it because of all of the work that Hartnell and the team did to get the character there.
Yeah.
Speaking of Troughton, your next choice is, I believe, a Troughton story.
Yes, it's The Mind Robber.
Oh, really? I don't think this is the time for riddles.
You must answer. Why did the chicken cross the road?
Oh, very well. To get to the other side, or so I've always been led to believe.
I've said over again that there's a lot of Troughton missing. Very few of his stories exist, but I am so glad that The Mind Robber is one of the ones that exists, because it is again unlike any other Doctor Who story, and it mesmerized me the first time I saw it. I almost couldn't believe that this was something that they put together and broadcast. This was 1966, I believe.
1968. I think.
That's right. I'm sorry, my fault. 1968 when this went out. And and just having the thought that this is something that went out on television at that time it's striking to me. It's one of the most surreal television experiences I've ever had, and so I like rewatching it probably more than any other Troughton episode for that reason, because it gives me that very surreal feeling.
I mean, Pat Troughton is personally my favourite Doctor. I mean, this was one of the first stories I saw Pat Troughton in, and I really enjoyed it. I like the surreal feeling. Like, it's not like a lot of Troughton stories. You know, obviously he's a great actor, but the actual story is quite formulaic, and it'll be a base. You know, there's some people on there, aliens come, the base under siege, and it's, you know, typical future setting. Whereas this is nothing like any of those.
No. This is a story in which they can replace the actor playing Jamie for an episode and a half, and it works.
Exactly.
It works perfect.
You couldn't do that in any other story.
No. No, so I think it's brilliant. I think it's one of my very favorite Who stories of all of them. I think it's one of the first ones too where they really they expanded the boundaries beyond what they'd tried to do before, and it worked. It made something phenomenal. Troughton is having a great time in this story, and I love just watching him do all of this stuff and watching him up against the carcass, which is hilarious. I mean, Troughton is having a great time, and because he's having a great time, I have a great time watching it.
He's very enthusiastic in this episode. I mean, he's enthusiastic in all his stories, but he's really enthusiastic for the more fantasy-based setting of the Mind Robber.
Right, and I think it goes back to what you guys were just saying, which is that basically season 5, all of it was based under siege, where it's a monster attack, except for the enemy of the world, which is brilliant. But a monster attacks some base with some people in it, and the Doctor saves them, and there's 6 stories. That's basically that, and to get something like the Mind Robber after that must have been so exciting for him.
Yeah. It is a complete change from the more usual Doctor Who story that you would get, as Conrad described, the more base under siege feeling. It almost feels a bit edgy in the fact that it takes them so out of the comfort zone that you see the characters in, you know, the base under siege scenario. It makes it very difficult for them, in a way, how to react to this sudden change.
The first episode of The Mind Robber, which was made on the fly because the 6th episode of The Dominators just didn't work, none of the
episodes of The Dominators really worked.
Well,
but
so the first episode of The Mind Robber is one of the most disorienting things I've ever seen, where you're so used to a formula for Troughton stories, and then they throw this at you, which is crazy robots in a white field with just insane things happening in basically a locked area, just a simple white room area for 25 minutes, and then the TARDIS explodes.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. I mean, the TARDIS exploding is like one of the most terrifying things they can even do in Doctor Who, because it's their way out, it's their way home, and just for it to be destroyed, obviously it comes back, as it always does, but, you know, to a viewer watching that, it's, you know, totally just like severing any links with home that, you know, they get. Right.
I try to imagine when I'm watching the classic series what I would be thinking and doing during that week after an episode before I get to see the next one. And that week in between Mind Robber 1 and 2 would have been absolutely agonizing for me. So, yeah, just for that, it's one of my favorite stories.
So, moving on to your next choice, which is... again, a very different Doctor Who story in its way. It is quite a unique story.
Exactly. Yeah, it's City of Death, which means I've basically skipped the whole Pertwee run and most of Tom Baker's run in my list.
I say, what a wonderful butler. He's so violent. Hello. I'm called the Doctor. That's Romana. That's Duggan. You must be the Countess Scaglione.
I am an enormous Douglas Adams fan. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is one of the first books I can remember reading and loving. It sort of, I'm a writer by trade, and it sort of expanded my horizons as what you can do with language. Douglas Adams was an absolute master of using language in brilliant and clever ways, and to find out that Douglas Adams actually had control of the script thing of Doctor Who for an entire season and wrote a couple of stories was marvelous for me. City of Death is the type of story that I would show anybody coming to this show. It's perfect in so many ways. The script is 100% right on. The acting is wonderful. Tom Baker is having the time of his life doing this story and saying this dialogue. Lala Ward is right there with him. It's just a beautiful, brilliant piece of work. And even down to like Tom Chadman as Duggan, I think he's brilliant.
He's great.
Tremendous character. There's no part of City of Death that doesn't work. It's one that I enjoy watching again and again and again. And I think somebody said this once, but it's absolutely true. Just when you think you can't get any better, John Cleese shows up. It makes it's perfection. This story. This is the ideal, sort of the platonic ideal of a Doctor Who story for me, where it's every element of it is exactly right. It's a clever sci-fi story with a lot of humor, some phenomenal performances, some really great work from Tom Baker, and a resolution that's perfect in every way.
Yeah, it very much is the sort of ideal story, as you say, that you would show to somebody who didn't really, know Doctor Who.
Yeah, I thought the same.
It brings them into this completely mad, surreal world that Doctor Who encapsulates and that it's about.
I mean, when I started doing Doctor Who, I thought, well, I don't know if I could ever get one of my friends to watch Doctor Who from the beginning, but I thought if I could get them to watch anything, it would be City of Death, because, that would just blend it. It's not like there's no special effects that are absolutely bad. I mean, Scaroth's mask isn't the greatest compared to modern prosthetics, but I mean, it's not so terrible compared to some of the effects, and the humor's like the humor is perfect. Really, it's
absolutely. Yeah, there are so many great Douglas Adams.
The setting of Paris. You've got and one of the actual only times where they went to a foreign country to film in the classic series.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And even down to Dudley Simpson's theme when they're running around Paris, I think that's a beautiful piece of music. I can hum that now in the way that I can't hum a lot of the incidental music for the show. I think it's beautiful. So every bit of this works. So many Douglas Adams touches probably my favorite line in City of Death. It's so small, but it's probably my favorite line on the whole thing is when Duggan says, "You know what I don't understand?" And Romana says, "I expect so." Just great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you've got all sorts of funny lines. You got obviously what a wonderful butler, he's so violent. You're a beautiful woman, probably.
I don't think anyone could be as stupid as he seems.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that you can very much watch again and again and again. Like you sometimes, because there are all these great lines, you don't notice them on the first watching, and you can pick them up again when you watch it a second or a third time. It's such a layered story.
And the cliffhanger for, I can't remember which episode of it, but the one where you with Captain Tancredi, where you see that he is exactly the same as Count Scaglione.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, the whole thing pulls you forward too. One of my main criteria in making this list is stories that I can watch again and again and again and want to watch again and again and again. City of Death sort of tops that list for me. It's a story that I will watch over and over again and have for many years, and I've never gotten tired of.
I haven't actually rewatched that in a while, but I want to now. just remembering how good it was, I do want to watch it again. I mean, it's Romana is one of my favourite companions, and that's one of the stories which made me decide that. And obviously, Tom Baker, can't beat a bit of Tom Baker, can you?
Right. Even in the terrible stories, Tom Baker's worth watching.
So your next choice is, again, a very special story. It is quite a unique story in Doctor Who history. It's an anniversary story.
Right, it's the Five Doctors, and there's a couple of reasons why this is here.
It's all fading.
What's fading?
Great chunks of my past, detaching themselves like melting icebergs.
First of all, as you've noted, most of my list is unique stories, sort of outside the box stories for Doctor Who. And one of the ones that almost made it was Warrior's Gate, which is another that's so completely outside what the show normally does. Yeah. And I think the Five Doctors is sort of where all of my my love for traditional Doctor Who sort of landed on this list. It's a celebration of traditional Doctor Who in a lot of ways. One of the main reasons that it's here is that I watched this when I was a kid over and over and over again. I had no idea before seeing the Five Doctors that there were Doctors before Tom Baker. And so getting to see John Pertwee and Patrick Troughton and the guy I thought was the first Doctor was amazing for me as a young kid. And then I think it's such a sweet and warm piece of work. I think it's such a loving tribute to what I love about this show. In a lot of ways, what it's celebrating is not the stuff that I go back and watch. You know, the traditional stories don't pull me in as much as something like, you know, I won't go and watch Death to the Daleks as much as I would, you know, something like Mind Drop, because it's so unique. But the fact that we have an episode that celebrates all of that is wonderful to me. And the fact that it's so good. I mean, it's rubbish, but it's so good. That makes sense. I mean, it's a terrible story that's really clunkily done. You know, even the bit where the Doctor's trying to help Sarah Jane up the extremely shallow incline.
I believe that was supposed to be a cliff originally, but they just couldn't do that.
A cliff, you know. So, I mean, even things like that, where it makes it so beautiful to me, where it's such a celebration of how wonderful and how awful this show can be.
Yeah, and it's like there's nothing that you'd want them to bring. You want them to bring back that they haven't brought back. I mean, they got Cybermen, Daleks, you got all the companions virtually in there, the Brigadier.
Yeah,
all the Doctors, apart from Tom Baker.
You know, who thought we'd see Susan again? There she is.
Yeah.
I mean, you even get Tom Baker in the Sharda scene.
Yeah.
So they don't just totally ignore him. They do actually try and put some, you know, even though they couldn't get him back for new scenes.
Yeah, falling out of his pond.
Yeah.
Into Cambridge.
Yeah. This is a story you cannot reconcile with continuity. There's just no way to make this fit in with any sort of sense that we're telling a long story. This happens totally outside the show, but that works too for me. That makes it even more of a celebration of the show. You know, that you're standing outside it and saying, "Isn't this wonderful? This is Doctor Who? Isn't it wonderful?"
Yeah, it is a complete, almost like a big Christmas list of all the things you would want in an anniversary story.
Yes.
You know, you've got the Time Lord, you've got the Master, you've got the Daleks, the Cybermen, you know, all these quips between
Rascal Warrior Robot.
Yeah.
It's a shame they never brought that back, actually, because that was very epic.
That was a great scene. Absolutely.
They should do it with Peter Capaldi.
Yeah. So it's really it's the warmth of this story that I love.
It's a party.
Yeah, it is. It's a big reunion party, and I love it so much. I love seeing the Brigadier again. I love every time we get to see the Brigadier. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. Five Doctors was actually the first ever classic story I watched.
Oh wow!
I don't remember. I can't remember how long ago it was. It was like, I don't know. It must have been about. I'd been watching David Tennant. I think it would have been about 6 or 7 years ago when I watched it. I'd have been about 11 or something. Just the Five Doctors. I don't know why, because it's not like one you'd think, oh, it's such an amazing first story to watch. But I did just really enjoy it.
Yeah, you weren't lost at all. You didn't feel like there was so much. No.
Well, I think I must have been a bit lost, but because I mean there is a lot of references in there. But I mean the actors are just so good. You sort of They, it doesn't matter if there's a few things you don't understand. They sort of bring you along with them.
Right. No, it's a beautiful thing. I love it.
Yeah. Your next story is, again, a unique story, as you said. They are really all unique.
It's another Peter Davison story, I believe.
And it's a very dark Peter Davison story.
Right. It's the Caves of Androzani.
There must be something I can do. Tell me.
Too late, Perry. Going soon. It's time to say goodbye.
I may have mentioned this before, but I'll go a little more in depth with it right now. Peter Davison is my doctor. I started when I was 6 or 7 watching Tom Baker, and I love Tom Baker. There's nothing to not love about Tom Baker, especially when you're a kid. But Peter Davison, I mean, when Logopolis aired and Tom Baker changed into Peter Davison, first of all, I had no idea what was going on because I'd never heard of Regeneration before. And suddenly it's this new guy. But I think I intuited enough to know that this was a new beginning for a show. And I love jumping in on the beginning of things. Even as a kid, I did. And so we had our old top-loading VCR. You press the button and it takes 30 seconds for the thing to pop up to load the tape in. And so I have videotapes filled with Peter Davison episodes. I had the entire run of Peter Davison episodes on crummy, disintegrating VHS tape that I watched over and over and over again as a kid. And Peter Davison is sort of etched onto my soul as a Doctor Who fan. I remember actually wearing a bathrobe with celery attached to it and running around as a kid pretending to be the Doctor. My mother tells me this never happened, but I remember it. So Peter Davison is this. I mean, when they aired that Time Crash special with David Tennant and Peter Davison, and David Tennant said, Doctor, you were my doctor. I felt that. I almost teared up during that moment because that's so true for me. Peter Davison is the man for me. And this is his absolute best story. It's his last one, but it's the one where the whole of the Fifth Doctor era is a very nice guy getting beaten up by the world over and over again. And he loses a lot, tragedy befalls him. He loses Adric, early in his run. It's a tragedy for him. And just bad things continue to keep happening. And in his last season, I mean, you get stories like Resurrection of the Daleks, in which everybody dies. And you get stories like Warriors of the Deep, where he has to basically commit genocide, and he wishes there was another way. In fact, he says that at the end of the story. There should have been another way. And it's painful to watch this really nice guy go through all of this stuff, but it all leads to Caves of Androzani, where he finally just stands up and says, no more. I'm not taking any more that the universe is throwing at me. I'm going to save one person, and I'm going to do it now. And it's amazing to watch. Peter Davison knocks this one out of the park. Robert Holmes' script is another home run. This is a beautiful, wonderful, like you said, very dark, but very, very captivating, compelling story. It's one of the very best Doctor stories of all time. Even if it weren't, one of my favorites, I would acknowledge that it's one of the very best. Yeah,
it really does demonstrate all of Peter Davison's acting skills in that story. I mean, it is a tour de force for him, really.
Definitely.
Going from, as you say, this more. He's a bit more, I think, hardened a bit from what has happened in Warriors of the Deep and the preceding stories, but he still has this youthful optimism.
Right.
And it's very interesting to see as the story goes on that it doesn't matter whatever is thrown at him, he still wants not only to survive, but to get Perry through and to make sure that she lives, even at the cost of his own life.
Absolutely. The last episode is a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. And it's entirely about the Doctor saving Perry's life, even at the cost of his own. And this is such a Doctor thing to do. It's such a, I don't know, it's so thrilling for me to see, not only to see Peter Davison pull this off at the end of his run, to say, no, this is the Doctor that I am. This is the Doctor that I've been. And I'm making this stand right now. But to see see the character do this, to see after years of getting battered around and having horrible things happen, to just say, this is it. This is the stand I'm going to take. And I think it's beautiful. I think it's a wonderful piece of work.
Yeah, and it's not as if like it's like a massive big battle, Dalek Cybermen. It is like, you know, a petty war on a small like, little planet saving one person. So it's not.
Yeah.
The scale is small, but the stakes for the characters are very high.
Absolutely. I love Sheraz Jep. I think he's a tremendous villain. I think there's a tremendous performance behind there too. I think it's great. But you're absolutely right. This is a little dispute with a little tin pot tyrant on a planet that no one's going to remember beyond this. So that's a perfect place to make a stand like this.
Because I don't particularly like many of the regeneration stories. Logopolis, I don't particularly like it, and the War Games is good, but it's a bit long. But Time of the Doctor, let's not mention it. But but like Kaiser Androzani, I think is perfect for a perfect regeneration story.
I completely agree with that, except for the part about Time of the Doctor, which I love to pieces. But I completely agree with your assessment of who's there and all of the other regeneration stories. After this, we don't even really get one, do we? I mean, we get,
Time of the Rana is stuck at the front of the episode, and same with the movie.
Yeah, and the movie, which is kind of awful. But yeah, I mean, they for the first couple, they didn't know what regeneration was, and so they just were trying to figure it out. And then they had a great opportunity with Tom Baker's, and they spoiled it. Logopolis is not a great story. This is the ideal regeneration story. I totally agree with that. The other thing that makes it great for me as a regeneration story is that it's a statement of the character in his last three. You know, I mean, the others don't really do that. The others, I mean, Planet of the Spiders comes closest because it's the Doctor facing his fear and having a journey during that story, which is fine. But I think Kaiser Androzani is the one where it really says this is the Doctor. You know, he's going to change, but this is him. This is the character, and this is what he's about.
You could say that it gives the definitive mark of what the character is about, that no matter what happens, he will save the person that he cares about and the person that he's taken into this horrible situation, right. even if it effectively makes him lose his life.
Right. And that all holds true until the very next episode when he tries to strangle her.
Yeah. Because that whole thing about this being the perfect regeneration story, I mean, you've got him trying to save one person's life, and I think in the new series they sort of based it off that. You know, when the 10th Doctor is just saving Wilf. I mean, you've got the whole big story, the Time Lord's returning, like a big epic story, but he is just going to save Wilf, and you know, and Eccleston when he leaves, he's saving Rose.
Right.
It's just saving one person is, you know, and it all comes from Kaiser Androzani.
That's a very good observation. Yeah, that's absolutely right, I think.
Talking of the new series, the next choice on your list is moving quite a bit further on from Kaiser Androzani, and it's a David Tennant story.
Yeah, so I skipped all of Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, and I skipped the movie, and I skipped Chris Eccleston, and that was difficult to do because there's some stories in there that I really like. I'm one of those people that think that the last couple of seasons of the classic series are excellent. I think despite all of the issues that they had, you know, putting these stories together and the cheapness of them in a lot of ways, they're really innovative, particularly McCoy's last season. I think it's tremendous, but I didn't put anything from there on there.
I think they did end it too soon because it was showing recovery by that point. You've got Survival, Curse of Fenric, you got Ghostlight's one of the. I'm surprised you haven't chosen that with your unique stories thing.
It was
because that's one of the most unique.
Yeah, if I understood Ghostlight, I probably would put it.
I don't think anyone understands Ghostlight.
Right. No,
even the writer.
Right. No. Definitely. But the one that I've chosen next is The Girl in the Fireplace from the first David Tennant season.
Madame de Pompadour, you look younger every day.
And this is going to sort of lead into the idea that I really think Stephen Moffat is the best writer the show's ever had. And this is probably going to be a controversial opinion.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think his work has been tremendous over the last since he's been in control of the show, and he wrote the absolute best David Tennant stories. I think I am not a Russell Davies fan. I try to be. I think he's turned out some very good work. Midnight and Turn Left, for example, are excellent stories. Gridlock is an excellent story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, these are excellent stories. But I mean, I think I think he tries too hard in a lot of ways. And so his finales try to one up each other, and you get into the whole universe is at stake stuff, and it's tough to watch. He's not a particularly strong plotter, I think. He's pretty good with characters and emotion in ways that Stephen Moffat sometimes is lacking, but. Yeah, and so that's the one area I wish Moffat had a better handle on. But I think as someone who's writing a complex puzzle box time travel story, which I love, I think Moffat's the man. I think his dialogue is among the best the show has ever had, probably is the best the show has ever had. And his stories are the ones that make me just sort of sit back and wonder over and over again. They remind me why I love the show. They remind me of just how much wonder can be encapsulated in it. Girl in the Fireplace was one that definitely did that for me. I really think David Tennant's a great doctor. I think Girl in the Fireplace is the first time that Moffat wrote for Tennant, and it's the best story of the second season. I think it's tightly plotted. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous to look at. It's gorgeous to listen to. The dialogue is wonderful, and it surprises you every couple of minutes, or there's something new, or some new extraordinary thing that basically tells you, not absolutely anything can happen from this point forward. Anything can happen. This show can be anything. It's a romance, which is something that the show had not really tried before. I mean, this is a full-on romantic story, and David Tennant pulls that off beautifully. Sophia Myles is wonderful in it, and I think from first moment to last, this was the story that really convinced me. First of all, that Moffat's a genius, but secondly, that the show is absolutely back, and the show is going to be just fine.
Did you have sort of reservations at first then, when you started watching the new series came?
Oh my, yes. Round about the time of Farting Aliens, I said to myself, if this show were not called Doctor Who, I'd stop watching it right now.
Yeah, the Girl in the Fireplace is in a way not completely, but slightly similar to the Aztecs, which was your first choice. I mean, there's the element of romance with the Doctor and Madame de Pompadour, as there is with the Aztecs. There's also this temptation, in a way, I think, possibly on the Doctor's part, to change history,
right?
Maybe, and comparison with Barbara, and there's also, in a way, these not too very conventional villains, like you said in the Aztecs, that Barbara was more of the antagonist. In the Girl in the Fireplace, the clockwork droids aren't so much evil; they're more just machines that are trying to fulfill a purpose.
Right.
So it is similar in some ways. I mean, very different in others, with the Hawks, for instance.
Yeah, these are connections that I've never drawn, but I think you're right. I think there are some strong similarities between the stories, especially when you get into the area of changing history. I agree with you about the droids and the ship basically being the antagonist, and it's not really a villain in any way. It's just stuck on this particular program,
which is in a way similar to Stephen Moffat's story for the first season, The Empty Child. The antagonist there is not deliberately trying to cause havoc. It's more a malfunction with technology.
Right.
In a way.
Right.
And the thing about Girl in the Fireplace is that, the time travel is one of the best episodes that shows the true time travel, because you've got the period setting, which is wonderfully done, and you've also got the spaceship, which looks great, and they're so easily between the two, rotating fireplace, and it's one of the best time travel episodes, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think Moffat is the writer that has used time travel better than anybody. He's made it he's woven it into the fabric of the show in a way that it really hadn't been before. Throughout much of the classic series, the show was the TARDIS shows up somewhere and they stay there for the entire story, and they're in one place in one time for the most part for an entire story. That's absolutely not the case in Moffat too, where they'll jump back and forth during timelines, and they'll come up with time paradoxes and fascinating things. I mean, I know River Song is a really controversial character. I like her a lot, and I like the fact that she and the Doctor sort of play with time in that way, where she'll go back to ancient history to leave him a message to come get her far in the future. The things like that that sort of blow my mind. And, The Girl in the Fireplace was sort of the first indication of that for me, that this was something that could happen in this show. And then Blink was another. Blink is another brilliant story that uses time travel in an innovative way.
And there's not much Doctor in Blink either. That's the thing.
No.
That's is that the reason you didn't put it on the list, or?
No, it was sort of a toss-up, I think. But yeah, that certainly helps. Helped me make my decision, is that there's a lot more David Tennant in Girl in the Fireplace, and that's the only place he appears on this list. I adore David Tennant, so I think getting something to watch, getting an episode to watch his performance was important. So yeah, I don't think I really consciously thought about that, but I think I like Girl in the Fireplace more than Blink. Anyway, I think it's just a more tight story. I think it's beautiful in ways that Blink isn't.
Yeah,
Blink is terrifying, but
Blink is a very good story. It's sort of one of the fan favorites. So, well, a lot of your stories that you've picked are sort of fan favorites. Kaiser and Azan, A City of Death. But I think the next story you've chosen is one that would be more surprising. It's not as much of a fan favorite. It's not as much of a one that everyone would automatically think of as Amazing Doctor Who. And
okay, well, it's the 11th Hour.
No, wait, hang on. I know what I need. I need fish fingers and custard.
Matt Smith is my favorite Doctor since Tom Baker, and watching him just come in, just walk in and own the part over an hour was astonishing for me. This is also one of my favorite Stephen Moffat scripts, is the 11th Hour. It's relatively simple, but it's gorgeous. I mean, every element works towards showing you who this new Doctor is, and giving Matt Smith just free reign to win our hearts. I mean, I think Matt, using the analogy I made before, Matt is sort of Tom Baker-ish in that he was born to play this role. He makes so many interesting choices a minute. I think he must. Either he's got this intuitive sense of how to deliver these lines, or he must go through every line he's given and pick the weirdest way he can say it. Like, he'll try it 4 or 5 different ways and go, no, that one's the strangest. I'm going to go with that. And his characterization is amazing to me. He does what Peter Davison did extremely well, which is he's a very young guy playing a very old guy, and it comes out really well. He plays it perfectly to me. I have adored watching Matt Smith over the past few years play this part. There were a couple of moments in the last season where I felt he may have gone a little too far with the interpretation. I think him battling himself in Night and Silver was where I was just like, pull it back, guy, pull it back. But the 11th Hour is it's potential personified. It's an hour where you are absolutely certain after watching the 11th Hour that this show is going to be wonderful from here forward. It's going to be great. The 11th Hour is the episode that I show people. Now, if they want to get into Doctor Who, I say start here. Just watch this episode.
Unless it's Andrea, in which case you say start from the beginning.
Yeah. But if I want to hook somebody, I show them the 11th Hour, and I say if you're not a fan at the end of this hour, it's probably not for you. But I think it's pretty close to perfect. I think the story is easy to grasp and yet really clever, and I think the final moments with the Atraxi on top of the hospital roof, that is the most perfect I am the Doctor moment that I've seen in the show, where you have the images of the previous 10 Doctors, and then Matt just walks through them and owns the part. He's like, I'm the Doctor. And
yeah,
I think
that's a great scene.
Yeah, I may have let out a little whoop of excitement when I saw that. I made a little dance. It was so wonderful.
I mean, I personally love the 11th Hour, and I thought I was the only one until I saw your list. I was like, no one has mentioned the 11th Hour. I really enjoyed it because it's sort of, I think it's a great introduction to Matt Smith. I mean, I love Matt Smith's Doctor. I think he's a great, it's a great, like you said, he sort of is just the Doctor. You don't think this is someone playing the Doctor very well. You think it's just the Doctor. He's sort of similar in the same vein as Tom Baker or Patrick Troughton, and you can sort of tell where he's, that he's watched, because he watched back stories like Tomb of the Cybermen, and you can sort of see the similarities there. But the 11th Hour, I mean, I just think it's quite iconic. I mean, you've got the fish fingers and custard, you've got the Raggedy Doctor, and you got Karen Gillan's first appearance.
Right. I'm a big fan of fairy tales, and I'm a big fan of anything that sort of captures that fairy tale feel. And the 5th season, Matt Smith's first season, really does that extremely well. I think it's entirely based on fairy tales, and the 11th Hour, just the atmosphere that it generates, the fairy tale atmosphere, drew me in immediately. It immediately became one of my favorite episodes of the show ever.
I mean, it's been said by Moffat before that he was trying to make Doctor Who more like a fairy tale, and you can definitely see it in the story, with the apple and with everything, really. I mean, but then also you could see it as, you've got the just the alien, the Atraxi, Prisoner Zero, very good design. You've got the conventional aspect there as well. It's not like just a fairy tale that might put someone off, like there's nothing linking back to Doctor Who. You still have the conventional aspect.
Right. It's an episode that shows you what the show is, while also pushing it forward. Was that it's difficult to do an episode that sort of opens a new era while making sure that sense of history is still in place, and that's only happened a few times in the show's history. But I think that the Stephen Moffat, Matt Smith seasons are sort of this brand new era, and I think they're among the best that the show's ever had. And I think the 11th Hour welcomes you into that very well.
And talking about pushing it forward, your next choice is does
certainly a story that does that.
Push it forward into another new era in a way that the 11th Hour does.
Yeah, this one I thought would probably be the most controversial choice of all of them, actually, because I love it in ways that other fans don't seem to. But it's Day of the Doctor.
Oh, no, not now.
Doctor, what is it?
No, not now. I'm busy.
Is it to do with the paintings?
No, this is different. I remember this. Almost remember.
As a 50th anniversary special, I think it was perfect. As a new episode of the show, making opening this new door, I think it's perfect. As I think it's probably one of the best episodes the show's ever aired, honestly. I love watching Tennant and Smith together. I love John Hurt in it. And I mean, just as an episode of Doctor Who, it's great. But as an examination of guilt and of rewriting your own story to overcome that guilt, I think it's beautiful. I think there's a thematic element to it that a lot of the people who dislike it are kind of missing. I think the main criticism that I hear about Day of the Doctor is that it renders the Russell Davies era, it rewrites it, basically it overwrites it and renders it pointless.
Seeing as you didn't like Russell Davies, I think you probably not like that.
No, I don't like Davies era, but I don't think anything could be further from the truth about Day of the Doctor. I don't think it overwrites the Davies era at all or renders it pointless at all. I think the Eccleston and Tennant Doctors had to go through what they went through in order for the 11th Doctor to be able to make the choice that he makes at the end. I think it ties it all together actually very nicely and makes it sort of like makes this whole new Who thing from seasons 9 to from Eccleston's first season up until Matt Smith's last. It makes it into one giant story. If Moffat had wanted to simply overwrite it, he could have ignored most of that and done that, but he didn't. He tied it all up in a nice bow, actually. He made it from Rose to Day of the Doctor, made it into an epic that's actually about something. It's actually about growth, about personal growth and guilt and working to basically rewrite your own story in your own head. I think it's beautiful.
No, I enjoy Day of the Doctor very much. So I mean, I've actually rewatched as well, so I can say wasn't just the 50th anniversary hype and excitement. Because when I first watched it, I really enjoyed it, but I thought, will it be as good on rewatch? But it was good on rewatch, and
it was rewatch.
Now I'm surprised to say that a lot of people don't like it. I mean, the people I've spoken to have all really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. But the criticism that I've heard from about it is from fans of the Davies era who think that Moffat was basically spitting on the Davies era with this episode, and I don't think anything could be further from the truth.
I mean, no. I mean, he brought back David Tennant. What more could you want?
Right.
I mean, if he wanted to get rid of that, he could have just had Matt Smith on his own.
Right, that's true. Yeah, even in the basic fabric of the episode, that's true. But but even in the way, the way that the whole thing was structured and the way that he, brought in John Hurt's character as an essential part of this story that's been sort of shunted off into a corner and ignored, and brought it out into the light and made him into the Doctor again. I just think that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea of another Doctor, a hidden Doctor, was very controversial. I mean,
absolutely.
When I first heard about it, I'll admit I was quite annoyed. I was like, what's this going to do for the numbering? Because I'm OCD like that. Well, why can't we have Paul McGann? But then, obviously, we had Night of the Doctor, and then we did have Paul McGann, and then going in, seeing John Hurt in Day of the Doctor, I was certainly won over. I mean, his performance is perfect as the War Doctor.
Yes, I totally agree.
And I call him the War Doctor, so I don't have to renumber them.
Right. Well, I think that's the compromise that we make with it, and I think that's just fine. I agree with Moffat that this was the best option. First of all, it gets John Hurt into the show, which is great. But secondly, Paul McGann's Doctor was not the Doctor who would have done this, and we saw that in the beginning of Rose that Eccleston had just regenerated, and so there's no way he could have done it. So I think this was logically the best option.
I mean, it's an episode that very much brings together different elements of the show. It doesn't ignore the past, but it also celebrates the future.
Right, it celebrates beautifully, yeah.
Yeah, and another thing I was worried about is that there wouldn't be anything for classic Doctor Who fans. But then you've got, John Hurt's Doctor was like a classic Doctor. I mean,
absolutely
grumpy. I'm not there with it. They weren't all grumpy, but you know what I mean. The way he sort of made fun of the sort of wiggling their arms around, pointing the sonic screwdrivers.
Right. Yeah. I think he was the voice of the classic fans who sort of look askance at the new series and don't think it's really part of the show. I think he was the one who was timey-wimey, I think he was the guy who was giving voice to that. And I think that's an important voice to have in there, because I think the point of Day of the Doctor was to unify the entire show, to make it into one big epic. And I think it really works in that way. I think it really brings in everything from the past. It really brings in everything from the new series too, and then moves it forward. That like you said with 11th Hour is extremely difficult to do, and I think Moffat's really good at it. And I think for a 50th anniversary celebration, if you take An Adventure in Space and Time, and then you take the 5-ish Doctors all together, I mean, I could not have asked for more.
No, I mean the 5-ish Doctors is hilarious.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Adventure Time in Space was, it might have not been entirely accurate, but then again, you couldn't be, and they couldn't, I thought that was flawless, really. And then you got Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, so I could not have asked for more. As someone who's watched the show since I was 6 years old, I could not have asked for a better celebration of it. I got to go see Day of the Doctor in the theater too, which was marvelous. Watching it in 3D with a bunch of other people who all were there, very excited about it. It was fantastic. And then we get Tom Baker at the end. Oh. Man, I love that.
That was a great scene. I had been spoiled by Will here, who sent me a thing about he put on Facebook something about Tom Baker being in it. So sadly I didn't know, but by that point I thought, because it was like interview with Radio Times where Tom Baker said he was in it, I thought, he must have just been like trying to be controversial and trying must I thought this can't be true, he's not been in it yet, it was coming to the end, and then you hear his voice, and then it sinks in.
Yeah, that was a beautiful scene. I could have hugged Moffat for that scene. It was so lovely. Day of the Doctor is pretty much everything I love about the show in one 70-minute whole. I put that and the 5 Doctors on my list because they both sort of do that for me. They both encapsulate, everything that I adore about the show in just big chunks, just to celebrate it, just to basically have a giant party about it. Say, this is Doctor Who, and isn't it wonderful? And
you've also, you've got all the Doctors there at the end in that picture. You see them all together, and that sort of unifies it.
Yeah, there are still, up to that point, there were still people that I talked to, and there are still people that I talk to, but there are people that I talk to who really don't think the new show is part of the show. They see a clear division between the 26 seasons of the original show and the new one, and they don't think it's proper Doctor Who or whatever. And I think that was part of the aim of the Day of the Doctor, is to say, no, it's all proper Doctor Who. If you're just a fan of the new show, you should go watch the old, and if you're a fan of the old show, this is still your show. It's, I don't know, that to me is a noble aim.
I don't have any preference. I like some new series stories, like some classic serials, and there are bad ones for both.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
It depends what I'd rather watch Tomb of the Cyberman than, I don't know, like Love and Monsters.
Love and Monsters.
but I'd rather watch Day of the Doctor than watch
The Mutants or something. Yeah. Right.
Or Revenge of the Cybermen or something.
Sure. Yeah.
There's just I don't see any distinction. There's good ones and bad ones in both. But
yeah, I'm absolutely with you. I don't see any distinction between the old show and the new show either. I think it's all one show. In fact, I'm pedantic enough to call the first season 27, then 28, 29, 30. I think it's all one big thing.
Yeah. Fortunately, it leaves out the movie, Paul McGann's movie.
Yeah, it goes between 26 and 27. It's fine. It sits right there.
Now, you also get to choose a book.
Yeah, this was hard for me because I I'm definitely a fan of the show, but I haven't explored the side media as much as I probably could have. So I've only read probably 2 or 3 Doctor Who novels altogether, but I read a lot about Doctor Who, and so I put any volume of TARDIS Eruditorum down as my book. Are you guys familiar with TARDIS Eruditorum?
I'm not familiar with it. I've read a little bit about it, like from when I saw your list.
Yeah. So Dr. Phil Sandifer runs TARDIS Eruditorum. It's a blog in which he went through. He's actually in the Matt Smith era right now. So he's gone through the entire show, and he's done some of the most brilliant out of the box criticism of the show that I've ever seen. Things that I've watched 20 or 30 times, I watch anew after Phil Sandifer writes about them. And he's in the midst of making actual paper copy books of TARDIS Eruditorum. He's got 4 volumes of it out now with a 5th on the way. And I love reading these. I'll take them places and reread them. I think it's some of the best writing about the show that I've ever seen. And so I know this is probably cheating a little bit, but in the absence of any really great Doctor Who novels that I've read, this is the one I picked.
Well, we did not specify it had to be a fiction book. I mean, non-fiction books are allowed. You also get to choose audio or another piece of merchandise, and you've chosen an audio.
Yeah, I have. Big Finish. I'm just starting to get into it too. So I mean, of the ones that I've heard, the one that I selected was Storm Warning, and I don't know why I didn't get into Big Finish for as long as I haven't been into them. It's something that first of all, it's a lot of money, which is always a problem. But it's something that I just sort of I think I wanted to watch the entire show before I started getting into other aspects of it. But now that I'm into Big Finish, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. So I picked Storm Warning because it's the first Paul McGann audio, and it's the first one that really sort of moves forward at that time. It came out in 99 or 2000, and at that time it was the first one that was moving this forward for Big Finish, where they're starting an 8th Doctor era. And the fact that Paul McGann only got half of a movie to establish his Doctor is a crime for me, because I think that half of the movie he does an extremely good job with kind of a lousy script. And I would have loved to have seen more with him. And getting Night of the Doctor was such a thrill because of that. And so realizing that there are hours and hours and hours of Paul McGann audio, and that he's wonderful in them, is just, this is opening this entirely new world for me that's, of course, going to suck a lot of my money up. But I love hearing Paul McGann in Storm Warning. I love hearing him establish this character again. And just love playing it.
That's Paul McGann's first appearance in the audios. It was 2001,
right?
I believe. And
2001.
Yeah, I think so. And
of the audios I've heard probably a couple dozen of them at this point. But of the ones that I've heard, I would give Storm Warning to somebody as this is an example of what you get with Big Finish, because you don't need, it requires no knowledge. You just need
arc or anything that you need to know about.
Right. Exactly. A lot of the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctor stories that I've heard do require a knowledge of the show to really appreciate in a lot of ways. They don't. The companions that are there, they don't give you any backstory about them. They just launch them in, and these stories take place between other stories, so they'll make reference to the other stories that came before. I like the television stories. Yeah, and it's probably difficult for a non-fan to really keep up with what's going on in Big Finish. But the 8th Doctor stuff, you can start at Storm Warning and just move forward.
I mean, a friend of ours was doing a Doctor Who marathon. He started skipping the recons when he got to Celestial Toymaker, which I believe is where you're at the moment, because he just didn't want to watch it. He's going about it. He's not very motivated. Let's just say that. He'll be listening as well, but he knows we say this about him. So, but he was planning on, if he ever gets to Paul McGann, listening to some of the audios. I mean, when you did doing Doctor Who, were you listening to any of the audios with Andrea?
There's no way I could make her do that. I've shown her Big Finish stuff before, and getting her to watch the show was something of a miracle just in itself. There's no way I'd get her to just sit there and listen to something for a couple of hours and then do that repeatedly. I don't think I could convince her to do it. Perhaps in a couple of years when she's in love with the show, as 2016 when we get to the right, yeah. But when we get to the really good stuff, maybe she'll be more interested. But I don't think there's any way I can get her to do it. I eventually would love to do a full-on marathon with the books and the audios and the show, just to see it all wrapped together.
Yeah, especially as you will have you'd be just following the movie, trying to get us to listen to the audios.
Yeah, no.
Just, I don't know how you've managed to get to watch all of Doctor Who. I mean, I don't know, did you save a life or something?
No, I have no idea either. She knows that I'm a big fan of the show, and she wanted to see why. And so she asked me what the best ones to start with are. And I said the 11th Hour is probably a really good one to start with. But if you want to start with the new stuff, we could start with Christopher Eccleston. She said, fine. So we watched Rose, we watched End of the World, and we watched The Unquiet Dead. And I think we watched the first part of Aliens of London. And she really felt that there was stuff that she was missing, And I said, well, there's, 26 seasons before this. We could just do that. And for some reason, she said, okay.
And then you said, can you film your reactions from a YouTube channel?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So with every time she said yes to this, I've not pressed it or asked her why. I've just sort of accepted that this is some miracle that's happening, and I'm going to ride it. So. And now, she keeps saying that we're committed now because we have videos out there, and we actually have fans. We have people who wait for the video to go up on Saturdays and comment on it and write us. And, so now she can't betray, that. She can't betray the fans. She actually is very committed to, I don't know if this is something that you've picked up on from the post or anything, but she's a musician. She's in the process of releasing her second album. It comes out on Record Store Day out here, which is April 19th. And I've heard it, and it's marvelous. It's fantastic. So she's very very well versed in keeping fans happy. Yeah. So, this is one of the ways where I think we're going to get her to keep going.
Yeah.
So I think we're pretty much coming to the end now. I mean, it's been a great pleasure. I mean, we've had a great chat. I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't know when we'll do we will do another episode at some point, but we don't know when. It's depending on what guests we can get and stuff. So,
I want to make sure that we mention the address for the website. So
okay.
Can go all that along. So that's doingdoctorwho.wordpress.com is our blog site. And then if you go to YouTube and look up Doing Doctor Who, you'll find us. It's all one word, all lowercase.
Yeah, and our website's also a WordPress. It's desertisland2.wordpress.com. And we're thinking about putting this on iTunes. I don't know if you're okay with that. Having an iTunes.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
So, you can subscribe through iTunes if that's worked. And thank you for listening.